The gravity of the time is such that every new avenue of peace, no matter how dimly discernible, should be explored. Never before in history has so much hope for so many people been gathered together in a single organization. You will provide a great share of the wisdom, of the courage, and the faith which can bring to this world lasting peace for all nations and happiness and well-being for all men.
So we're here today on Titans of Nuclear with Emmet Penney, who is the host of the Nuclear Barbarian podcast. Emmet, welcome to Titans.
Hey, happy to be here.
Yeah, I heard you, chatting with Chris Kiefer on The Cubble, my favorite podcast in the whole wide world, and just knew that I had to talk to you. I think your perspective is just so refreshing, and I love challenging norms in general. So great to have you here. But before we get into your current work, I'd love to just kind of learn a little bit about you, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally. God, it's such a circuitous story, I think like many people in America, I grew up thinking nuclear was bad.
Where did you grow up specifically?
Oh, I grew up in Illinois.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a little surprising then, right?
I mean, it depends, right? Like, what's more powerful, a quietist nuclear industry or The Simpsons?
Right. Okay. No.
I can tell you that I watch The Simpsons every single day after school.
Yeah, point made. It's so funny because a lot of people brought that up to me as like where they think a lot of the bad public information comes from. I have different opinions, but also I never watched The Simpsons growing up, so I don't really have that same lived experience.
Yeah, no, totally. And I actually didn't even know that it still really existed, right? For a long time. Like Fukushima happens and stuff like that. And I was just like, oh yeah, seems bad, didn't really look into it. I mean, the sort of ambient accepted perspective is the pro-renewables, strictly renewables perspective. Like that's just dominant, right? Like I remember being a junior in high school and taking a day out of, I think it was like AP comparative politics or something. I don't even remember. A day out to watch An Inconvenient Truth. Right. And that is strictly carbon tax and wind turbines and stuff. Yeah. Those are the solutions he gets to. And there's something that seems intuitive about it, and I found my way on the political left. My radicalization, I mean, I came from a Democratic household, so, my parents were liberals and stuff like that. What really radicalized me was being really, really broke after college and working 3 jobs and making $17K a year.
Yeah.
In Florida. And after getting sort of mugged by reality, I developed a sort of working class populist affect. I still am very pro-union and stuff like that. And all that is available to you there is, except for a few holdouts, right, are the idea that you can Green New Deal your way into a better society, which is basically degrowth. People are like, no, we're not degrowth. And then you read stuff like a Verso book called A Planet to Win or something. And they're like, we need one last stimulus to green the economy. And then we just step away and let it stabilize. And it's like, okay, this isn't even in touch with reality. And that is definitely degrowth. But I didn't really know much about nuclear until I got a direct message from Michael Schellenberger in 2017. I had published an article in Paste magazine called Lecture Porn, The Vulgar Art of Liberal Narcissism, where I took Aaron Sorkin, Jon Stewart, John Oliver, Samantha Bee, that whole iteration of liberal satire and comedy to task as sort of cognitive dissonance based on supplying their listeners with narcissistic supply.
It's so funny because Jon Stewart now has, I mean, I liked the Daily Show. I seem to remember, I don't actually remember, but I kind of liked it in general, but I never like really knew too much about the issues. It just kind of like seemed like a thing to like. But now that I know a lot more about these issues and Jon Stewart's got a new show out, I'm like, this is garbage. This is
Yeah.
propaganda. What is
Yeah.
going on here?
Yeah. I mean, you know, like Jon Stewart took over an ailing show, I think, and just at the right time because the media lockdown on critiquing anything Bush was doing in his first, especially first term in office, was really intense. Like, you really only had like Janine Garofalo from like Air America willing to go on Fox and debate these people. Like, otherwise, you were just called a commie and shunned from public life, you know? That's how it was at the beginning of this century. But anyway, I sort of took them to task. Michael liked what I had to say. He DM'd me and he said, what are you doing right now? And what I was doing was being so broke that I couldn't replace my cell phone, and I was working at a bookstore.
Okay, but something's wrong about this story though, because I mean, when I heard your interview, and even just now, you've used a couple phrases that are like, I think you like speak in beautiful prose, and and it's like a little too intellectual for me to believe that you had trouble making money. Like, do you understand where
Oh,
I'm coming
totally.
from here? Like,
Well, I mean, it depends, right? Condolences to me, I have 2 liberal arts degrees, so I think it's totally explicable that I can be eloquent without being able to make money.
okay, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
Point
Right?
taken.
Yeah. So, I remember being like, "Yeah, I'm available," and then immediately got the guy who worked in the ordering desk to take the front counter where I was working, so I could pretend to take an order from Penguin Random House while I talked to Michael for like 90 minutes. And I remember just writing, like, you know, every time my boss would walk by, I would just be like, right, yeah, like 5 orders of Moby Dick, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, or whatever, like mute the phone real quick and say that, or write something down. And he was like, well, look, like, you're a lefty, why don't you check out, you know, don't just believe me, right? Like, make up your own mind. Let me know what you think. Why don't you check out this book by Lee Phillips called Austerity, Ecology, and the Collapse-Born Addicts. He's a lefty like you know, see what's up. So I read it, and Lee's book really changed my mind on all of this. It was the first sort of look I got into the material realities of energy, agriculture, and all sorts of other things, and the first substantive critique I'd ever been shown of the hegemonic, like, climate doomism, pro renewables thing at all in my entire life. And I was like, wow, this is like super persuasive. And I looked into it a little bit more. And then I was a delegate for the Democratic Socialists of America 2017 National Convention, right? Like, I was in the tank, you know. I was also a member of the Industrial Workers of the World at the time. And I remember going to the DSA convention and sitting in the Eco Socialist Working Group meeting. And everybody was just like, well, we're just going to have to close down nuclear. And I was like, so we're not even like having a debate. Like, everybody has already decided
So
that like
crazy.
nuclear has to go. We have to do all renewables. Like, that's what's up. And I was as far as I could tell, the only person in the room that like looked around like, what's going on? I was like, I assumed that it would just be in the conversation, or might be in the conversation, or there might be dissension. That was not the case, right? So right after that, I flew out to Berkeley to go meet up with Michael at Environmental Progress. And, you know, like, I had to borrow money from my mom. um, and, uh, and I spent a couple days crashing on a friend's couch in the Haight, and going to EP. And I met people who are my dear friends now, Madison Serwinski, Mark Nelson, you know, all of them. And it totally blew me away. You know, they walked me through some of the arguments, and, you know, like, I'm a doubting Thomas,
Yeah.
right? So I still wasn't like totally
Yeah.
completely convinced, but I was like, okay, there's like something really here, and something important is happening. And I didn't end up working for EP. Like, a bunch of other stuff happened, and my life went on. And then a couple years later, I was uh, tutoring the teenage children of the power elite in LA. Somehow I got that job. And that company I was working for fell apart. And I called Michael and I said, "You should hire me." And he said, "Yeah, actually, I'm working on a book. I should hire you."
Cool.
And that book was Apocalypse Never.
You helped write that book?
Yeah. And
Oh
that was
my
a
God.
life-changing experience.
Yeah, well, for me too, just even reading it.
Yeah. Right. And so to be in on that in the ground floor was amazing. It was hard work. I had never done anything like it before. My mom had written a couple like business books on like sponsorship and stuff like that. And I had like edited those in high school or like, done like the due diligence on the bibliography or whatever. But I had never like, stem to stern done any work on a whole book. And I'm not like a technical guy. I don't have a STEM background. So I had a huge knowledge gap that book helped me shore up a little bit as we worked on it.
And how hard was it to go through the technical arguments as a non-technical person? Like, what's your strategy? Is it just like you call someone and say, "Hey, can you help me understand this?" Or do you pick out a textbook or just Google a lot? Or like, how do you do it?
It depends on what it is, right? So there were times, there's this kid, Jemin, that worked at AP at the time. And there were times where like I'd be reading something and I would almost, if I was, because I lived in LA and I'd fly up there every now and again, right? Otherwise I worked from home. So I'd fly up there and I'd be like reading through some science papers. And then as soon as I would realize Jemin wasn't doing anything, I'd walk over there and almost grab him by his lapels and go, "Give me the dumb flat brim hat guy version of whatever this argument is, break it down." But the other way I do it is I try to pay attention to principles, right? So one of my side hustles is I teach the great books online.
Oh, cool.
Right. And it's become one of my like specialties for the company, Online Great Books, is I offer the Euclid Book 1 intensive for 6 weeks, right? I'm actually doing one of those right now. I've done it several times. And what I learned from Euclid is that if you can start to break things down without discrete like measurements or numbers, and like pay attention to the logical relations or proportions, it's way easier to understand what's going on.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense.
So that's what I try to do, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm looking at something, I'm thinking about relationships and proportions, right? If I'm looking at the grid, I'm like, what's the mix, right? What delivers when and for how long? Like I'm not going to be able to get into all of this, but I need to be able to break it down to, like when I used to read really like high left philosophy, right? I remember reading everything, and at the end of every chapter, I would say to myself, how would I explain this to the guys in the back office of the Gold's Gym in Tallahassee, Florida I used to work at? Right? Like that's sort of my approach to stuff like this.
Yeah, that's such a good perspective. Okay, cool. All right, so you helped them put together that book.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask, just because I actually haven't had a chance to ask Michael this yet, like what has been the again, I'm not on Twitter.
Sure.
But like, so what is, and I don't think Twitter's actually that like good a lens into like real society, but like what is the adoption of that, the arguments that he's put forth in Apocalypse Never? Like what is the reception, and is there like a growing movement now of people who are more of like climate pragmatists? Is that a phrase?
Yeah, I think, or eco-pragmatists, I think they might
Well,
call themselves.
I already knew about eco-pragmatists, but this was the first time, like I always thought of myself as an eco-pragmatist, but I also thought of myself as a climate alarmist.
Mm-hmm.
And between Mike's book and Bjorn Lornberg's book, I actually changed my perspective. Like,
sure, totally.
Really changed my perspective on climate alarmism. And now the messages that I try to put forth are more about energy poverty, clean energy, that type of stuff, rather than focusing so much on the climate side of things.
Right. So again, like it's hard to tell from my bubble, but like I can tell you that Michael has a large footprint. I mean, he was just on Joe Rogan, and by the way, like I've listened to Rogan for a while, and 10 years ago, literally 10 years ago, I remember listening to one of his episodes about him not liking nuclear.
I was gonna ask, because I heard one of the episodes, I actually think it was like Kanye was on, because I listened to him religiously as well, and said like something pro-nuclear, and Joe Rogan didn't have anything bad to say about it. And then I think it's come up a couple times where he hasn't said something bad, though I also think the facts were misrepresented. But also the Schellenberger podcast with him actually didn't touch upon the Apocalypse Never stuff very much, just like a little bit at the end. It was mostly
Yeah, it was just a little bit, and that clip actually has, I think, over 1 million views now officially on YouTube. But I think what I've seen is that people who used to disagree with Michael, look, I'm not going to name names, I think that's catty, are basically saying, like, repeating Michael's positions as if they have been their positions all along.
well, that's how everyone,
which is where you want to be, right? That's what
Exactly.
you want to have
fine,
happen.
fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah, I'm like, great. Like, you don't need to put my name on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's where he is. I think it's gaining a lot of traction. I think the alarmism play is quickly getting stale, and I think this winter is going to be supremely vindicating, almost tragically.
Well,
for the
tragically is
people
the
on
right.
our side.
The right.
Like that.
Yeah.
We don't want to throw this like I told you so party. What we want to throw is a welcome in party.
Yeah.
And say, this is hard. There are solutions to this. It doesn't have to be this way. Come on over.
Yeah. So let me ask though, was that like your first like deep dive into nuclear, or had you been doing nuclear stuff outside of the relationship with Schellenberger?
I'd looked into it a little, but it was really hard to figure out where to start. I mean, to be honest, if we take a look at just like where the nuclear scene is before like Michael starts hitting critical mass and afterwards, it's like the amount of nuclear media that exists now is so much more than even a few years ago.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Right? Like, I mean, it was honestly hard to find good information. It got frustrating, so I stopped. Like, I wasn't,
it's still hard. It's still hard because I constantly find things from reputable sources that are like fully contradicted by other reputable sources.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But always the confusion is always in the direction to further disparage nuclear, even by so-called nuclear advocates.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a whole like learned dependence or weakness thing that goes on in the nuclear world. I refuse.
Can you tell me more about that? Can you extrapolate on that?
Yeah, all right. I don't think we should have to kiss the ring of renewables. I think renewables is a conversation that's over.
Thank you.
We don't need to build any more of it.
We
have more than we need.
Yep.
It's over. It's done.
Yep.
The experiment's done. It sucks. The ESG economy is going to fall apart just like the subprime mortgage economy. Mark my words.
Yeah.
And it's going to destroy some college endowments, and they'll deserve it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way it goes.
I think you're right. I don't think we have to kiss the ring either. And I've gone back and forth. I think I still do it in front of certain audiences. Even we rebuilt the Energy Impact Center website, and we included a bunch of stuff about renewables there, essentially just not to scare away people and then to kind of like lure them in. But I'm of two minds on it. And in some audience, it depends on the audience. Sometimes I'll kiss the ring.
Yeah, you can't always go hard in the paint, right? Like, so if I were talking to a more like renewables friendly person, I would say, look, they should only ever be about 10 to 15% of the energy mix. So they should only be about 10 to 15% of the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. But on the other hand, God, if I say something like, I think of myself saying something like that. And then I think, well, okay, but now I'm like committing a logical fallacy, because if you've been able to, do 85% nuclear, like, why would you even do the 15% renew? Like, where would that actually be helpful? Like, I can't see it.
Look, if you could do nuclear, you shouldn't do renewables, but like at some point you have to lower the barrier for entry for people, right? Like, and the other thing is like
rhetorically, you're saying like in conversation, you have to lower the barrier of entry.
Yeah, like emotionally.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's what I mean. Not intellectually, but emotionally.
You're right.
Like, and so that's what I would say. I mean, look, like, unfortunately, America doesn't have any politicians that are willing to say what like Marine Le Pen would say, which is, if you elect me, I will rip out every single wind turbine in France. Hard to beat that.
One, but
yeah, she was just like, oh, Macron wants to do SMRs. Sorry, I want to do a national EPR build out. Like, yeah. I'm not like endorsing the National Front or whatever. I'm just saying that like the tenor isn't the same as it is in America everywhere, right?
So I have a question. You were kind of alluding to the fact that you started off as this lefty or whatever. Like, politically, how would you describe yourself now at this point?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
fair enough.
I think it's pretty hard at this point, and I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
I wasn't even really good at being a lefty. I just like reading the ancient Greeks too much for that. That was always sort of like an uncomfortable fit. I was Jesuit educated. I never really stopped being a virtue ethics guy.
Yeah.
That's not a good fit over there. I was very, very skeptical of the politics of pity and resentment
Yeah.
that happened there too. But I think that's a pervasive problem in our politics, honestly. I think people think that that might pass for humanism, but it doesn't. I'm actually working on a piece about this, how the Green Left isn't Malthusian, they're Schopenhauerian.
What's Schopenhauerian mean?
So Schopenhauer is the father of pessimism, and he
Okay.
was a hardcore misanthrope. But all of his ethics are based in the pity and compassion of suffering.
So, I mean, it seems like I've heard this from other people before. I'm not making this up, that it seems like the parties have kind of like switched positions on a few topics, like, like
Hmm.
free speech and this one about pessimism. Do you think that's also a switch? Like it used to be the right that was more pessimistic, and now the left is in a certain way more
I
pessimistic.
mean, there's a certain strain of the right that's always going to be pessimistic because that is the reactionary creed,
Right.
right? That's just straight up like Oswald Spengler, Decline of the West stuff. They're never going to be free of those guys, just like the left won't be free of some of its own crazies.
Yeah.
You know, um, I will say that there is a sort of becoming entrenched defeatism at the moment of like supreme cultural victory for the broad left in America. And I think that's interesting to watch. Like watching Biden's climate plans get kind of wrecked, in part just for lack of statesmanship, is a pretty surprising. At the same time, it seems like there's open revolt against the last 5 years of what we call the Great Awakening.
Yeah.
No normal
Oh,
people like that, it turns out. They
yeah,
think it
yeah,
sucks. And the only thing that made it palatable was having Trump in office, right?
exactly.
Now no one wants to live like that anymore. They didn't even want to live like it then,
Yeah.
right? Um, it's just too much. So I think they're running into their own problems. The right, I don't know what they're going to do. Julius Krein had a great piece. He's the editor over at American Affairs. He had a great piece come out in American Moment. Um, said called I think can conservatism be more than a grudge? And it's great. And he talks about the need for an almost more social democratic right in America.
Hmm.
That's a very surprising argument. So they have a lot of energy in their like pro-American industry, reshoring, like open to the populist thing. Those are the guys who like me the best over there, guys and gals. They really respond well to nuclear. They even respond well to the reality that you need sort of like a centralized, standardized national build out
Hmm.
because they're not
Interesting.
libertarians, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And is that your position, a centralized state build out? Is that your
Something like that. I mean, I'm trying to figure it out right now. I have a piece in mind. So I wrote a
and
piece
why
for,
not? Yeah, okay, I'll let you continue with your thought. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I co-authored a piece with my friend Adrian, for the Bellows, a sort of left publication called "We Need a Nuclear New Deal, Not a Green New Deal,"
Yeah.
and that's sort of our case for that sort of centralized build out. Um, and I think that that is like theoretically correct. Like that is the way to do it. Mesmer is sort of a big part of that. Just the realities of an economy of repetition.
Yeah, but okay, but can I tell you something? And this is a problem that I have even with some of my other or
Yeah, please.
yeah, with that argument, even from some of the other like more pro-nuclear people that I know, is that like history shows us that the first 50 plants built in the US would outcompete any energy source period built today. And they were all different. Like they're all like non-standardized plants.
Hmm.
And that's just because of how easy it is to design and build a nuclear plant without the NRC breathing down your neck.
Right. I mean, I do think. Okay, so my hot take is that. Oh man, I think
And
the
by the
NRC.
way, out of those 50 plants, 26 of them are still operating today under the existing NRC rules. It's just that somehow it's logically consistent to have grandfathered some things in, but you're not allowed to design new
Yeah.
things to the old standard. Like,
Right. Yeah. So look, it's not that there's a whole conversation here. This is why I said I think it's theoretically broadly correct. There's a whole I want to break this down into a few things. There's a whole conversation about what the US is even capable of doing right now. And we don't know. Right? The way I think about this in my head is the 1964 World's Fair in New York. Right? So there are two major exhibits there. There's IBM's and there's GE's. Now, the IBM vision of the future is the future we're living in. Cybernetic, completely connected, very lean, the closed system, totally globalized, very computer run.
Yeah.
GE's was called Atomville. And it was all about big productions of nuclear plants, which I call industrial cathedrals.
Yeah, I love it.
And how those were going to bring prosperity to American life through our industrial might.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't make anything here. That's incorrect. I think people who are like me, who are in the reshoring, bring back American industry, or like oversell how much we lost, but we did lose enough to lose, I think, more competencies than we knew we were letting go of.
Yeah.
I do think it was a bad deal. And
go ahead. Sorry.
Whatever we're going to do, we need to figure out what exactly is we're capable of. Now, no matter what, we need to decriminalize nuclear, right? We have to go after the regulatory regime. That's something I totally support.
Yeah.
It needs to be very deregulated to get this done. Well, maybe then you could say, okay, we've deregulated enough that a lot of different players can come to the game and we can build a bunch of things.
Right. I mean, I am certain that is the only thing that you need to do is just roll back the regulatory creep, which, by the way, was driven by nuclear incumbents themselves.
Oh, of course.
But it's like, if you see what comes out of Houston in terms of like big like pressure vessels, engineering, pumps, like for the oil and gas industry, their equipment is better than the nuclear equipment. It's like this nuclear safety standard makes equipment less safe. Like if you look at the capabilities of N-stamped equipment, because they make so few of it and no one's designing it, no one's improving on it, no one's working on it, that is worse equipment than what is produced for oil and gas. Just let oil and gas build a bunch of nuclear plants. All the physics that needed to be figured out was figured out by Fermi, like when he was doing it like all in his head. Okay, it's not that fucking hard to build a nuclear plant. It's hard to comply with regulations.
No, I think I'm with you on that. I've got a hotter take coming down the pike right after this.
But I'm on it so bad.
What I'll say is that my dad lives 3 hours outside of Midland, Texas, right? So I went to see him and I landed in Midland. And that was my first time seeing really, because that 3 hours is just the first hour out getting out of Midland. You're seeing nothing but well pads. You land in the airport, they're just like really, they almost look like clip art advertisements for like well pad components. And I was just like, this is like a real industrial town. And I was like, also none of this is going anywhere for a really long time, by the way. There's a reason why Texas is like an island grid and has almost its own form of energy sovereignty. And you are not going to pry that from their hands. Not for a while. That's just the reality. Anyway, so I have great respect for what they do, and perhaps you're right. Like, I'm interested in that argument. I would love to look into it more because I'm interested in American prosperity and lowering the hurdles to it, right? Okay. So if we want to go after the regulatory regime, what are we going to have to do, right? Aside from policy, right? We all know that needs to be a policy win, right? What do we need to do? Who loves that regulatory regime more than anybody?
I think the nuclear incumbents, right?
Some of the nuclear incumbents, but not just them.
Who else?
The biggest opponents, both in the media and in the political bodies, will be the major green NGOs.
Okay, yeah.
And if you think that they're going to be persuaded by the fact that nuclear is low carbon, let me tell you, you've got another thing coming.
Not a chance.
I think, and this is what I'm working on now, I've just started. We need to start trying to crush the major green NGOs in America.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to find resistance from me on that. But it's like, I still don't understand, even with it. Like, okay, so it's like we have Fukushima, which no safety systems and no one died.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, if anything, one could make the credible claim that the nuclear regulator in Japan killed 1,000 people by mandating an unnecessary evacuation.
That is basically what I say when people ask.
Right. They yelled fire in a crowded theater. And so if
Mhm.
you're going to attribute any deaths due to that incident, other than the drowning deaths, of course,
Sure.
it's going to be because their regulator yelled fire in a crowded theater,
Mhm.
not because of anything to do with radiation.
Right.
And so how is that not the only argument that is necessary, other than like all these other kind of like underlying forces, to convince anyone that the whole idea of having an independent nuclear regulator is totally unnecessary?
Look, I mean, I'm persuaded by that, but it doesn't really matter because people hate nuclear for different reasons, right? They hate nuclear because they're scared. They hate nuclear because they feel bad. Some people don't want to believe a better tomorrow is possible for very interesting psychological reasons. One of them is that it makes them less special. You know, that's important, right? If you're sort of the last or one of the last generations, that's really, really special, even if it's dark, you know?
Yeah.
So there's that. And the other thing is there's just path dependency, man. Like all of these people cross their Rubicon. It's a whole patronage network
Yeah, exactly.
that's dug in deep to the global economy.
Yeah.
None of them are, and none of them are going to walk back and say like, oh yeah, actually we made a big misstep here. We should all get behind the one competing technology that makes everything we've done irrelevant.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
That's the
So
problem.
what I want to do is, and you can reach out to me at nukebarbarian@protonmail.com if you have any tips for me, is that I want to start looking at dirty personnel, and I want to start looking at ways in which they've been funny with sharing polling data and stuff like that illegally between their like 501c3s and 501c4s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I do when I teach the classics is I end up having to teach Thucydides, the Peloponnesian War. Right. I'm about to do that next month. So I'm starting to read it already. You know, I've read it a couple times. And one of the things that Thucydides brings up is that towards the end of, or the end of his book, not the end of the war, but at a certain point, they fall into such infighting that they lose the leadership class capable of commanding the Navy due to exile and executions. Right. My first thought was, how do I create that type of churn at the NRDC? I want everything from workplace violations to bent congressmen to family members on the boards of companies they should not be on. I want it all. I want them all gone.
But the question is, it's like, okay, well, like, what's your war chest if you're going to go up again? And they've got hundreds of millions of dollars. What's your war chest if you want to go up against them?
My war chest is zero. So right. So
Right.
I would also say that the people of Buchanan, New York, and maybe the state of New York or whoever might be able to file a class action lawsuit against NRDC, Riverkeeper, maybe even the state of New York for preemptively shutting down Indian Point.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that's legit. I'm just worried about like, so the problem is if you're going to dig up dirt, it's because they're dirty people, and those dirty people also know how to attack, how to fight back, right? So it's like,
Sure.
what's to stop them then from like falsifying some criminal claim on who's ever attacking them? So even if it's not you, but it's like, you know, through a proxy or something, what's to stop them from just hiring someone to, you know, I don't know, like, you know, throw a bunch of drugs in their car and then call the cops or something. It was like, why they could do that? They could do that for like
Sure.
$100,000 probably, and they've got hundreds of millions.
Look, I mean, what other option do we have? Do we think that they're ever going to let a nuclear build out happen in America?
I don't know. I think no, but I do think I don't have a really good solution, but I do think kind of ridiculing them, making, you know, like just kind of going after them in the public sphere as being everything that the, as being the conservative ones, them being the ones that are, I don't know.
Sure. I mean, the discourse wars are important, but discourse doesn't build a plant, and it can only kind of save one.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, yeah, I guess my whole strategy is that, what our organization attempts to do right now is, help show development in an area that isn't so captured by the US and, green NGOs. Like
Sure.
show that a cost-effective build out works in another country, and then do it in another country, and then do it in another country. And then 10 years from now, it's a lot easier to kind of look at the proof is in the pudding situation type thing. And
Sure. I think that's important work, but I also think that your organization doesn't have anybody who's the first ever in history climate advisor to the White House, but the NRDC does.
right.
You know what I'm saying?
And the question is, like, how much does that cost? Because in theory, like, what I want to see is like a new powerful nuclear industry that is just
Same.
so successful at building plants economically abroad that they've got billions of dollars to throw around here. And then they could buy a whole election. Forget about just a climate advisor. Like, why not? Why not go after, why not just start funding political candidates everywhere?
Yeah, sure. I think that's important too. Like, I'm not saying that my way is the only way.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
pushing back on that either. I'm just trying to spitball with you.
Yeah, because I think, great. I love that idea. I mean, I'm happy to see us building more AP1Ks in Ukraine. I'm happy if more people are building abroad in America. I think that's, American companies are. That's going to be to the benefit. It'll bring more revenue. It's good for the world. It's good for our allies. I love that. Huge in the export game because China and Russia are eating our lunch with that.
That's so crazy
right now. And also, like, we need to start having a conversation about nuclear as the national security standard for energy. Like,
I actually think that's probably the stronger, better argument domestically to build
totally. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Like, I think climate change is real. I'm not into nuclear because of climate.
Yep.
That's a solvable problem. We're solving it right now. Some projections just came out from Carbon Brief. It looks like we're on trend. Great. I'm in it for human flourishing, and I'm in it for a strong, prosperous America.
Yeah.
That's why I want nuclear. Yeah. And that argument is durable, and you don't have to scare anyone to get it.
I agree.
So I think that is what I would like to see more of our messaging. Happy to have the people who are worried about climate, because I think it's a real issue, on board talking about it, because they'll hopefully bring some people from that end. I mean, look, I'm like talking to Bitcoiners and stuff. I'm talking to anybody who will listen to me about nuclear. I was just on an internationalist left-wing podcast like yesterday talking about this, like explaining to them like what's going on with the European energy crisis and why all their grids are really privatized, shitty wholesale markets, you know, that disadvantage good base load.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy.
So the other thing I'm interested in is I was talking to my buddy Isaac Orr over at Center of the American Experiment, right? Now, Isaac's like one of the top 3 most capitalist people I know. So I love picking his brain because we don't have a lot of the same assumptions, but he's smart as hell and I respect him. And I think I even talked to him about this on the episode of my podcast where I had with him on it, where we looked at what CEP would have done to Arizona.
What's that?
That was the Clean Energy Performance Program or whatever it's called. They've changed what the acronym stands for several times, but it would have been bad is the answer. But I asked him, I was just like, look, I want sort of like maybe a more centralized thing, or what could you get on board with as somebody who's like very capitalist, very libertarian? And he was like, look, you can't just replace a bunch of brand new coal. He was like, because it's built into the base rate. No one's going to like watching that bill go up. And I thought about that. And one of the things I would like to suggest to Republicans, if they want to have maybe we need to call it a climate plan, rebuttal to the Democrats, having incentives, first deregulating. They already love to do that, so that's a great sign. And getting nuke bans lifted, right? And there seems to be support on the other side of the aisle for that. Manchin this morning was talking about lifting the nuke ban in West Virginia.
Oh,
He's
interesting.
very
I didn't hear that.
pro-nuclear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. But is creating a plan where coal plants that are going to retire can be swapped out for nuclear. Like as they go off, you keep the workforce there. You probably actually grow the workforce, right? You get to keep the base load there.
It's a great,
It's a
it's a
win for
great plan, but
everybody.
you can't, the problem is you can't build a nuclear plant in the US cost effectively, and you can't get a new one through regulations. Like you just can't until you deal with the
Mhm.
regulatory issue. It always comes back to me, like if you dealt with the regulatory issue, we wouldn't have to make an argument for replacing these coal plants. Like the market forces, we wouldn't have to say anything. Market forces would just make it happen. It's like the infrastructure, the transmission infrastructure is already there. It's about the same size. It's
Mhm.
like it would just happen if you could cost effectively deploy in the US.
Right, sure. I mean, that's why I'm saying their agenda would be in part deregulation,
Right.
right?
Do,
And then whatever whatever
okay. Yeah.
extra
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that part. You're starting off with the presupposition of dereg. Got it. Okay. Now I
right,
understand.
and then whatever maybe you need extra incentives or whatever, and that looks way more cost effective and easier than whatever insane fragilizing shit the Democrats are churning out right now. Like all of their Amory Lovins, like transmissionophilia stuff is no one likes it. No
No.
one likes it, and it's a bad deal.
Yeah. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna
No,
happen. I mean, anyone you talk to. I mean, I've been going across Europe, meeting with energy ministers and asking them like what are some of their challenges towards a clean energy transition. And one of the things that gets brought up over and over and over again is transmission lines, how expensive, how difficult it is. Like the same people who will bend over backwards with an environmental agenda will use that exact same amount of force to prevent transmission lines from going up.
hmm
Like they will sue them to death. They talk about like decade time frames to build like a single transmission corridor.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, just take a look at offshore. If anybody wants to hear an amazing offshore deep dive, Robert Bryce over at Power Hungry just had a
I gotta start.
fantastic
I know
interview.
I connected with him recently. I got to start getting into his stuff. I've
Oh,
heard great things.
Robert's a good friend.
Yeah.
He's the
Okay.
best.
Yeah.
Love Robert.
That's awesome.
That is an eye-popping interview. The guy talks about how offshore wind is basically a pipe dream, and the costs are just going up higher
I
and
didn't
higher
know
and
that.
higher.
I thought it would be fine, the offshore stuff. I didn't realize there was a problem with it. What's the big problem?
Well, first of all, the ocean floor is very crowded
Okay.
with stuff that's already there.
I didn't know.
Um, yeah, there's like shipwrecks down there. There's like all
Oh,
sorts of stuff. It is the same open land fallacy for putting it, just like scraping the Mojave and putting in solar panels. They're like,
I had
there's
no
nothing there. It's
idea.
the desert. Yeah, but there's a whole ecosystem. It's bad for the fishing industry.
Yeah.
There are tons and tons of transmission lines from uh, turbine to turbine and then back to the land,
I knew that
right?
was going to be a problem. I knew all
That's
that.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
huge
Yeah. I
problem,
knew that was a problem.
right? And the other thing is you're putting them near salt water.
Yeah.
They corrode really, really fast. It's not like faster, like, because all anybody does in the renewables world is they just like look at like an industry pamphlet that has like a warranty on it, and they're like, yeah, it'll last 40 years.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like that's their due diligence over there. Which is like total BS. So
Yeah. And
like,
then they say $20 PPAs or whatever, and they just so crazy.
it's total nonsense, man. Like it's all. I'm more and more convinced that this
But
is the
people are able to
new.
delude themselves, I think, quite for a while. I don't know if there's actually going to be a reckoning coming, or if people just delude themselves until it's too late and then blame the other side and say, well, you didn't take aggressive action enough quickly. My plan was always going to work. You know?
There's definitely going to be some of that. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of money in this, and you know, money walks. So too many people are going to do that. And the other thing is their favorite thing to do. I talked about this, I think, in a piece I wrote for the Claremont Institute called Power Trip for American Mind. And I said that their plan, their strategy, let's say, is to make us more vulnerable to weather. And so when basic bad weather happens, they can say, see, this is why you need to listen to us more because this is the climate kicking our asses, and then they go ahead and continue to make us more vulnerable to weather.
It's so fun, right? Because that's what happened in Texas. That's like literally exactly what happened.
Dude, I live in California. Right now, the diesel generator fleet to back up everybody because of how crappy the grid is here now is 24 times the amount of battery storage we have in the state. That's going to keep going because California's like, well, let's do microgrids. And it's like, yeah, what do you think's going to back those up?
Well,
Diesel.
I never understood the carbon argument for renewables plus storage, because at some point, I mean, like, storage is not without a carbon footprint. Renewables were never without a carbon footprint. Overbuilding the two, has additional carbon footprint implications. At, if you were just look at the baseline carbon footprint of solar, let's say 40 grams per kilowatt hour, and then you were to look at the baseline of, combined cycle natural gas, I don't know, what is it, like 250 grams? Like, it's not like you're in such a different ballpark that if you had to overbuild a bunch of solar, you couldn't, and plus add storage, that you couldn't see those numbers approaching combined cycle natural gas anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, not at all. Okay, by the way, do you want to know what their new COPE is? Because they're realizing they're in really hot water. This is their new COPE, just rolled out, right? Maddie Serwinski and I started noticing it when we wrote a piece for Real Clear Energy on the solar futures plan that came out of the DOE, which we called Empire of the Setting Sun. And they were like, well, we're going to do, I think it was like renewable energy or something like that, carbon turbines or something. I forget what phrase. It was like RECT, right? RECT. I forget exactly what they used. And they were just like, we're going to do green natural gas. That's their new thing. They're like, it'll be hydrogen or something else. But that's what we're going to do, because they understand now that they need the dispatchability that comes from natural gas, and there's no way out of that. So what are they going to do? They're going to try to figure out how to do the green alternative to that.
And that means you build a normal natural gas plant, you like sequester it on site or something.
Or one of the things that they're just like, well, we'll use our nuke plants to create green hydrogen when or whatever. I mean, it's all cockamamie. Like, it's so much conference bullshit. But it's like not even clear. When I was reading something on like Energy Wire or something, where the guy was just like, yeah, like renewable natural gas, like that's what we'll use. And they were sort of like, what is that? And he was like, I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, I think even just when they started calling it natural gas instead of methane, I thought that was just so genius. I'm like, oh, these guys are so good. Like,
oh yeah,
they applied the word they put the word natural in front of it, like to get the industry started, because people didn't have any problems with natural gas earlier on, I don't think. But methane, I think they would have had a problem with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it doesn't take much, to rebrand.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I have huge respect for those guys. I used to be like super anti-fossil fuels or whatever, and like now, because I like pay attention to the realities of energy, I'm supremely grateful.
Oh, I know, me too.
Like, so I have a thing coming out on Monday at my Substack called Why It Was Fire. And it is the beginning of a series of trying to understand why the green left is the way it is, and also what an alternative vision of a robust energy dense society would look like. So it's going to have several installments. This first installment is a look at why the Promethean gift was fire. Because it's energy.
Right.
And that allows us to do the work. There is no human flourishing.
Yeah, I know.
But with energy.
I know. Yeah. I know. No, I'm grateful for it too. I've totally shifted my perspective after I got into I went into the energy space as a climate alarmist.
Sure.
And just the more and more that I learned, the more I realized how important energy was to every part of life. And, and now I find myself at the point where if I had to choose one, preventing climate change and everyone living in energy poverty, or ramping climate change and energy prosperity, I'd choose, the latter. Like, so it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it now is I think that I don't really think the fourth industrial revolution, or whatever we're calling this, like AI stuff. Again, this is all just stuff from 1964. Like, this is just repackaged, right? We're still in that same future. And I think that right now, like the great like escalation of modernity is starting to level off. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's bad. I think it's just what's happening. So I'm taking a look at America's society. I'm taking a look at the grid, which is also something that we should use. It's way more of part of our arsenal for arguing for nuclear, right? Um, and I'm taking a look at how what role I want to play in America's future, however small. And I'm thinking it's my duty to conserve modernity.
Right, to make sure we don't fall back into some sort of.
Because this could easily become, I don't want to be a Cassandra, right? But like, let's say a bunch more RTOs get created,
What's an RTO?
more. So that's the Regional Transmission Organization. That's sort of like what ERCOT is. That's
Okay.
California. That's New England. Meredith Angwin's book, Shorting the Grid, is a great primer on how these things hurt nuclear, but also hurt our resilience as a country because they leave us vulnerable to the fatal trifecta of overbuilding of renewables, over reliance on natural gas, and over dependence on imports from out of state.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. That's exactly what happened in Texas. That's what happens in California all the time now. FERC, there's a big fight in FERC about whether to build more of these because former heads of FERC are like, you should build more because 80% of new renewables get put out there. 80% of our renewables exist in RTOs because RTOs are auction houses where you basically like bid to provide the generation for the grid, and it's a big day trader like secondary market thing. And what do traders love? Volatility.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
intermittent renewables and dispatchable natural gas are
Exactly.
great for that, right? Not so good for just like straight up baseload, right? So that is to me a huge part of what we're up against. That's part of the national security argument, I also think, by the way.
Yeah, I love that. I love the national security argument. I love it.
Because it's also air gapped technologically, right? Like that's something that I was listening to when Manchin was talking to people from the TVA, in other words, elsewhere. There's a clip of it online. And the woman says, like, look, this is our safest from cyber attacks.
Which?
It's nuclear.
Nuclear specifically. And
Yeah.
why is that?
Yeah, I don't know all the technical details to be honest, but she was just like, look, she basically said like, look, it's air gapped from other systems, right? It's like it's
She means
harder to hack
literally.
into.
She's not just making an analogy. She's saying like the way that like they've set up the systems.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, part of it is because they don't allow digital controls, but that's another
right, exactly. That's part of it too. So
story.
yeah, yeah. So I think that that's a huge thing in our favor. But that's what I'm thinking about, like conserving modernity to be handed down because human flourishing is still going to be possible. I just don't think it will be like the rapid like 5% compound growth of thermoeconomic ability that it was in the 19th century to the 1950s, you
Mm.
know. And it might not be that way. It could, and the only way it could be is if we continue to do stuff like nuclear
Yeah,
so that we can
exactly.
have
Okay.
that at all.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right.
Okay. Right. So that was my mindset. And what I was going to ask you next is like, well, why shouldn't we aim for that? And then the way to do that, obviously, is build a
Build
bunch of
more nuclear.
nuclear,
Yeah.
ever decreasing costs.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't really know if I buy like the progressive idea of history, where it's just like things just get better. I think history is just history. It's like what humans do, and it's totally possible for society to fall apart.
Yeah.
Right. I think you can fall into sort of like a passive optimism. That's a little bit serious, and I think that passive optimism is what helps create the sort of reactionary nostalgia that people in like the environmental movement feel. I have some buddies over there's some lefties over at Space Commune. It's a podcast and a YouTube channel. They do great long videos on degrowth and stuff like that, critiquing it because they live in Kingston, New York, which Warren Buffett's son is now terraforming with all sorts of like green NGOs that are hardcore degrowth and stuff like
Oh, I
that.
didn't know that. I didn't know that the Buffett camp was degrowth.
His son Peter, yeah.
Wow.
And they live in Kingston. It's a small town, and so they're watching it literally change the shape of their entire town. There's a great piece in Tablet by a guy named Sean Cooper that's called "When a Buffett Buys Your Town," that takes a look at it. But they call that sort of degrowth like return to the Earth Spirit thing. They call it return to Monkey. Like that's it. Return to monkey. Like that's
Oh my
the
God,
go
yeah.
backwards to it, right? And there's some people who actually want that and they're willing to pony up tons of money to do it.
I don't think they want that. I don't think they know what it is. I don't think they know what they're asking for. I think they've got some sort of fantasy in their head of that time they walked through the safe, like national park, like paved path. And they're like, this is what degrowth is. That like my one afternoon hiking through
Yeah,
Yosemite.
yeah, yeah,
That's
totally.
that's all they think. Like they don't know.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's nostalgia. It's not like
Yeah,
memory,
exactly. It's
right?
a
Where they're
false, yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, not memory,
nos-
nostalgia, right? It's like a false memory. Exactly.
yeah, it's like a false memory of that.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. They want whatever that idea that they have is. They don't understand what the realities of that will be. I was listening to some philosopher who I otherwise liked the other day being like, well, maybe we should just return to talking about like justice in a field or whatever. And I was just like, look, I get why that's romantic for you. I too like reading ancient shit. But you have to understand that that's going to be like 5 people and you'll be a slave.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way that's going to work, man.
Yeah.
If you want to do that. Doesn't mean like exploitation and brutalities don't exist today. It just means that like more is possible if you have more energy.
Oh, I know. I know. I mean, yeah, and I don't want to draw too many conclusions, but like, the world that I imagine where everyone has this like unlimited energy prosperity and how much it just kind of like turns down the temperature on how desperate people are in all sorts of situations, like economically, in
Hmm.
some socioeconomic classes, even in the rich world, versus literally just their ability to acquire materials or safety in other parts of the world.
Hmm.
Like I don't know, but this is my fantasy. I've got nothing to back it up, but I just imagine a world with so much more abundant energy just being a happier, safer place overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it in terms of like this what did the Greeks call it? Thumos, the spiritedness of humanity being able to be expressed more fully, more dynamically. That like sort of a vitalist greatness is possible with more energy.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want just give me some big beautiful art deco shit again. Like,
Yeah.
like I want big impressive monuments to
Yeah.
our ability to create. I want a national culture that respects the working person who gets their hands dirty and makes this possible. I think about in Cleveland, they changed the name of the team to the Guardians, right? From the
Hmm.
Cleveland Indians. And people are like, "Well, the Guardians, what?" So the Guardians of Transit are actually these big Art Deco monuments they have, and they look like gods holding like a taxi or like holding, a carriage or a train car and stuff like that on one of their bridge. They're
Oh,
amazing looking.
cool.
And I was like, that's what I want. Like I
Very
give
Lords of
me
the Ring-esque, like when they go down the river into the.
right, yeah, exactly, just like that. I'm like, that's what I want.
I know.
Like
I know it'd be
because I'm
great.
I'm more I'm more Gene Wolfe than I am Isaac Asimov. I think like fantasy wise or sci-fi wise, like I've always been attracted. I mean, no surprise, I grew up Catholic, so of course I have this affinity for Gene Wolfe and like you know. But that there are these huge things out there that are these big artistic monuments that have this
And that
like old school vibe
doesn't
to them.
I mean, the Foundation series had this like, empire based, like, on.
Oh, there's tons of stuff in Foundation that's awesome. I think anytime a show comes out based on something, I'm like worried. I haven't seen
Oh no, yeah, yeah. Well, actually,
the
so what's
versions
funny
of
is
it.
I reread the books recently,
Hmm.
anticipating, and I actually can't follow the TV.
Yeah, typical.
But it's also the case with Dune. I'm like really upset. Did you see Dune yet?
I did, yeah, yeah,
I reread Dune also anticipating, and I was like kind of disappointed. I mean, I think the artistic nature of the movie is amazing,
yeah.
but I actually think that had I not read the books, I would have no idea what's going on. Like I just put myself in the shoe of someone who hadn't read the books.
I thought that too, and then I talked to a friend of mine who saw it, and he was just like, "No, it was great. I got it."
He
I
did
was
get
just,
it. Okay, okay,
I was like, that big tube in space is the warp, right? He's like, "I didn't know what it was called, but I knew what it was doing," and I
okay.
was
So
like, "Oh,
people
okay."
can follow it. Okay.
Yeah, I think however you say his name, I do like him as a director. He does a good job with visual storytelling. But it was amazing to see sort of the production design of Dune on this theme of like what type of beauty do we want for our future, right? That's why we're talking about this. Um, is that it was a combination of like Art Deco and brutalism, like two of people hate brutalism, that's fine. but it was an incredibly like optimistic architectural form because of the amount of concrete they used
Right.
and all
Yeah,
of it. They're
I
just like,
see.
yeah, we're just gonna have this cheap ass energy forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the world that I imagine, for the future, well, like the other thing that disappoints me when I walk through like any city, even like a modern city,
Mhm.
things kind of still seem a little dirty. It's like, I don't know what it is. Maybe just like
Oh,
the
dude, I live in
roughness.
California. You don't have to tell me twice. And
Right.
I helped Michael work on San Francisco. I know
Oh,
what,
right. Yeah. Well,
I know
that's at
exactly
a
what
whole
you're
nother
talking
level.
about, buddy.
That's at a whole nother level.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, we have this ability. If we had unlimited energy, we'd have the ability to like not cut corners when it came to like the aesthetics of our environment.
Mhm.
Like, and so that's something else. Yeah, I wish for someday.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean,
I actually imagine the world where like it makes sense from an energy perspective that we 3D print cities, and then just like the level of attention to detail and
mhm,
creativity and design can just be like, you can just be swimming in it.
mhm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the potentials of 3D printing are. You would know more than me about that. But yeah, like I think that there is a different story of the future that we can tell. I'm very interested in like Aristotelian ideas of the polis, the society is a place for beautiful action, that is what we can come together to do politically, right? I'm interested in that vision of nuclear because whatever happens with nuclear, like let's say we deregulate everything and like the market stuff just flows. No matter what, in order to maintain it and keep it, we need a broad societal consensus
Yeah.
that nuclear is the way to go.
Yep. What do you think about movies? I've always wondered, like, why doesn't the next Star Trek or Star Trek-esque thing, like, why is it powered by a warp core? Why is it not powered by a fission reactor? It's
Yeah.
like what I would love to see a new sci-fi series that really captures the imagination, where the like the heart of like the infrastructure foundation are nuclear reactors, and just kind of like subtly embed it in every part of
Hmm.
like this cool vision for the future.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that's because at some point, um, after the end of history, the vision of the future became incredibly dim and apocalyptic. And I think when a lot of uh, very popular sci-fi things, stuff that gets turned into major IP now, was churned out, was sort of in the post-energy crisis, post-Vietnam era,
Mm,
right? Like I think one thing that we don't totally have a handle on is the way in which, culturally we understand, legally we understand with the 64 Civil Rights Act, you know, and just musically, right? We've sort of never left those 2 decades in a lot of ways. But we haven't really appreciated what that did to the American energy industry and our own relationship to and expectations of energy,
mm,
right? Especially because that's also when lots of like offshoring starts to happen, the 65 interconnect blackout happens, then that's a huge setback. That's a setback for utilities everywhere. And it is also when guys like Amory Lovins and stuff really start to gain their ground, and tell a different story, a less abundant story of the future.
yeah.
And that is the one that we have stuck with because all of those people have been integrated into the major institutions that
Yep.
decide these things, right? So I think there needs to be a reappraisal of the 70s energy crisis and the story we tell about it. And I do actually think that's important.
Yep.
And it is something I'm working on right now,
Oh,
you
that's
know
super cool. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
because we need to have a total reckoning of what that is, and I think now is a great time to do it going into what is another global energy crisis.
All right.
What we don't want to do is play the game of uh, lowering our expectations to meet our assumed reality. That is the worst lesson that we as Americans could take from what's going to happen this winter.
I agree.
And I think that is one that people are very, very primed to take.
I agree. I agree. I mean, I think that's the way it's been going for a while. But I mean, that's one of the reasons that I'm like such a big fan of Elon Musk, just because he is able to inspire in a different way. Like he builds
Mhm.
big physical real world shit that everyone says isn't possible. and then he just goes off and does it. And I feel like that, like just him being around, I think if we are going to see like a real transformation across industries in terms of like doing big things and people taking the opposite perspective of the one you just laid out, I think he's going to have like done a lot of the, path carving for that.
I think culturally that's very true. I think it's obvious that he's come around on nuclear, but he's still a solar panels and batteries guy.
Yeah. Oh no, I wasn't. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
complimenting his position on nuclear. I think he'll. I think actually, I'm like watching his language over time, and I do
Yeah.
think he's on the right track. I think like
Sure. Sure.
first, okay, we can do it all with 90 square miles of solar. All right, that's where I started with too.
Sure. Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Right. Like we want to have an open door policy.
Right.
We don't want to be like, we're the cool kids.
Yeah.
And like we were right all along. That sucks. No one fucking likes those people.
Yeah. And so now I see him kind of marching towards, I mean, I'm sure he has people in his sphere who are, praising nuclear. The problem is I think a lot of those people have bad information too. And so now I see him on the like, okay, the new nuclear path, like, oh, the next generation nuclear is safer, I hear him saying. So I'm for it, right? But I think that is the next step on the way to realizing, no, the old, like, safer. What do you mean safer? How can you be safer that when 3 cores melt down in Fukushima, nobody dies? Like, there's no such thing as safer than that.
Sure.
Okay. So it's like, once you realize that, once you're able to like cognitively do some pattern matching there, then eventually you come around to the point that like, oh, we had it all along. And then you got to be like, okay, well, what's changed? What stopped us? What slowed us down?
That's the real nuke pill.
Right.
That's the,
that's the real nuke pill. I like that.
Yeah, totally. So, like I grew up as like a punk and heavy metal kid, right? And there's sort of the trajectory you go on. You used to, it's totally different now because of the internet, but back in my day, and this was true, I think, for the generation before me, is you'd get into like a major mainstream band, right? Like Green Day or Blink-182 or something. And then you'd be like, oh, this is like kind of cool. And then you start like looking around like rock encyclopedias, or your friend with the cool older brother or sister that like knows somebody at the college radio station who's home from Christmas, or like whatever. Or you go to the local battle of the bands and there's like one other kid with like a weird t-shirt and long hair, and they show you like, you get into like the Dead Kennedys after that. And then you're listening to Black Flag. And then, like 10 years later, you're listening to nothing but like true Norwegian black metal or something, And to me, that it's like a similar trajectory with getting people into nuclear.
That's so funny.
Like, it's the same thing.
I love that. Yeah, I almost wonder if we can then kind of, if that's just something that has to happen on its own, or if there's some way that we can speed up the process. Or
I think the more people we have out there, look, I was thinking about this. I was talking to Chris about this when I was on a show, right? Is I said, like, I'm so glad I can't be Isabel Bemeke because,
different strategies, right?
Yeah, different strategy, and like, I don't want to say that there can only be one nuclear advocate. That's obviously not true, but there's probably only like it's good that it's not like the Highlander, there can only be one. But you want people in different domains, right? And the way that I think about this is very much like, I want the disaffected dudes I used to write for when I was covering heavy metal publications, covering stuff for heavy metal publications, to get into nuclear.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm wondering, if that can be done more strategically. I mean, I love that there are people and people are taking different tacks. It seems a little random to me. Obviously, to become more strategic, you need to actually kind of like fund an institution to like have people full-time thinking it out. But I would love to carve up society by,
demographic. Yeah.
By demographic, right. And then for each demographic, find a guy who's credible with that community, get them on the train. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like, how many carvings could there be? 1,000? So, okay. So you got to hire that. It's like, I think it's doable.
I think it's totally doable too. I mean, I'm hoping to eventually find sponsors and stuff to start thinking some of this stuff out, because I know that there are a lot of people who want to hear something different than anything that they've been told before about this, right? So the time is ripe, and we want nuclear to be something that like everyone in America who's willing to accept it, right, can see their destiny in. That's what we want.
Wow.
we want people to see their destiny in a nuclear build out,
Yeah.
the national destiny.
Yeah. That's good.
And
It's
America has a
powerful.
lot of different people in it, right? And that's great because energy is in everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everyone can figure out a way to see their destiny in it,
Yeah.
and like figuring out what that is like what I'm interested in, because I can't be the science guy. I'm not an economist. I can't really be the white paper guy either. Like, what can I be? Well, I can be what there are so few of for nuclear, which is some sort of philosophical, cultural ambassador
Yeah.
to energy and nuclear,
Yeah. I love it.
right? Like that is, I think, I mean, it's not the most important thing. I wouldn't fluff myself up like that, right? And I don't think that's true. But it's an important element that's missing, because one thing that I have heard from other people is that like it's not accessible enough, or it seems like stuff that only happens at conferences, or there's just too much lanyard stuff going on,
Right.
right? I
That's
happen to
almost for
also,
me. Listen,
yep,
I mean, when I tried to break into the nuclear industry, it was rough. Like for the first 3 months, nobody would talk to me. I
yep,
started showing up at random nuclear conferences. It was awkward, uncomfortable. Like even the podcast, it took me 3 months to get the first 5 episodes, when I was like, that's all I was doing was trying to hustle down episodes.
yep.
Like, man, it is tough to break into. Now I think it's a little bit easier. I mean,
I think
partially
it's,
because of folks like you and Chris and Mark Nelson, like a lot of people communicating in a more open way, broad way. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, we need nuclear aesthetics. That's one thing that I really have to commend the renewables people for doing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's like suffocating how pervasive their aesthetic is. Like,
Well,
if
can
I
we
see,
double click on this for nuclear? Like what is a nuclear static?
right, I think that's what's open. I think we need to think about, well, I should say, like, there won't be just one capital A aesthetic. There will be several, right, based on what we're talking about. This is a pluralistic endeavor because America's a pluralistic country,
Yeah.
right? But I swear to God, if I see like one more logo with like green and brown flat design that's about the environment, I'm gonna lose my goddamn
I
mind.
know, I know, I know, I know.
Right? Like, I can't do any of this like new corporate Memphis like highlights for kids stuff. It's too much. I don't like it. It's bad. It
Yeah.
feels belittling to engage it. It's like I'm a grown ass man. Like, give me something that feels alive. Don't give me something that feels like it'll play in a focus group,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I want something that feels alive because, like I said, we want to be able to see our own destiny in it.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's what's so important to me, right? Like, there's a story. I think of the image. I can't remember the scientist's name. It's one of my favorite images in American history. It's him standing with all of the burners of the rocket ships, like just behind him in the background, and they're huge in comparison to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's so dignified and cool.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, like give me something that has some of that energy. You know what I mean? Like, make me feel like more is possible, not like we're going to shrink to the size that we become acceptable for the world to have us continue exist on it. Right? Like, I want
agree.
that. Like, give me something, give me some of the marrow of life.
So yeah, where do we? I mean, my mind just always go. This is like the entrepreneur in me. Like, okay, let's make that actionable. So, like, what are the next steps to running with that idea of this like new nuclear static? What do we need to put together?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of why I started Nuclear Barbarians, because I was just like, I don't know, but I've sort of like put together this weird idea of the Nuclear Barbarians where I use a lot of Conan imagery and people seem to really like that. That's exciting. There's some sort of like vitalism to that that's important. And I was like, I'm just going to roll with it and see what happens. So I don't know. I'm thinking through it too. You know what I mean? I was just kind of like, I'll build it and they will come. I'll see what happens, and
Wait, can you move your head over to the side for a second? I just want to see the full graphic behind you.
oh yeah.
So can you explain that?
Yeah. So earlier this year, I put out a tweet where I was just like, I realized, because I'm a heavy metal guy, that a lot of the photos of Palo Verde had the same color template as because of it's in Arizona, of the Iron Maiden Power Slave album cover. And I was like, it'd be cool if somebody could
Oh, you are a
like,
heavy metal guy.
yeah, figure out how to merge those. And the tweet did really well. And I was just like, okay, but like no one's gotten back to me about making this vision a reality. And then my buddy Sterling Bartlett, who's a great graphic designer and comic book artist, like DM'd me, and he was just like, hey, like I just finished a bunch of deadlines and I don't have anything coming up for a while. Did anybody do? Because he's a heavy metal guy too. He was like, did anybody do that for you? And I was like, no. And he was just like, all right, like give me a couple weeks. Yeah, and so he built it for me. You know, I sing his praises because I think he's a really sharp guy. His comic, How Did We Get Here, is really good. So if people want to find him on Twitter and Instagram, you know, I always gotta, because he did it for free. It was very kind for him. Of him to do that. So yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I was basically just like, okay, I don't know who will like this, but I know what I like. And so I'm going to figure out how to make that, and I'm going to assume that there are other people like me. Now, there could be a more formal way to do this, right? With more funding, we could think about things, right? Or source people who are already primed and doing something real, you know, that we want to do. Because I don't necessarily, like I said, the sort of like top-down focus group stuff. I just, it doesn't work for me. Like I can tell, I can smell it. And I'm like, I feel like I'm being sold. Like I want somebody who's already has an interesting idea of, they have a good eye for something. You know what I mean? Like I want that. And then you say, however your eye has this vision of what could be, like just do that, but nuclear. You know?
Yeah, no, I think that the focus group stuff doesn't work. This is one of those things that maybe, you can't be so strategic about. You just got to try a bunch of stuff and see what resonates. Or maybe that is the strategy. Just throw stuff on the wall and see.
Right, exactly. Because like, right, when I go see like most movies nowadays or whatever, like I live in LA. LA is like the Death Star of oversold, overinvested in immortal intellectual property, right? And that stuff is so like put through focus group after focus group to become completely unobjectionable, but also absolutely visionless.
Yeah.
And most of it doesn't even involve watching real people interact on screen. Right? It's like Chris Pratt talking to a tennis ball on a PVC pipe, and they put Josh Brolin in there 8 months later. You know, like I don't want that anymore. That's what everything feels like.
Yeah.
You know, it's the slow cancellation of the future.
Shit. Oh God, you blow my mind, man. I mean, this is some like heavy stuff, but it's important, and no, it's just great to talk to you about it.
Yeah, likewise. You know, I mean, I'm just figuring this out too, you know, so I'm hoping, you know, I'd love for you to send me more of your stuff on deregulation if you have any, and like what like your vision is that's like less centralized and stuff like that, because I want to learn from you and I want to pick up on some of those talking points so I can get sharper in bringing this to my audience. You know what I mean? Like the more all of us collaborate and figure out how to do this, I just think the stronger, more authentic and real it's going to be as we start to persuade the public. And you know, it's we got to make hay while the sun's shining, because it's going to start to shine real bright going into this winter for us, you know, as I said, like for some tragic reasons, but like we just got to keep pushing, right? Like, you know, I used to be a power lifter, right? And there's this guy, Louis Simmons. He runs the strongest gym in the world. Strongest power lifter. It's just out of a tiny strip mall in Ohio.
Okay.
Right. So his major work is called the West Side Book of Methods. Now, Louis has been around forever. And in the preface, he lists every great power lifter that he saw come up in his day. You know, he's in like his 60s or 70s now. No one remembers these guys but Louis.
Yeah.
And he says, I never outlifted any of them, but I outlasted them all.
Wow.
I want nuclear not to just be strong today.
Yeah.
I want it to be strong today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the mentality we want to have.
Dude, you're giving me the shivers. All right. On that note, we should wrap it up. Emmet Penney, thank you so much for taking the time today. I hope this is the start of like many conversations between us to come.
Oh, please. I would love that. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me on. By the way, for your audience, if you want to see any of my stuff, nuclearbarbarians.substack.com. You can find me at nukebarbarian on Twitter. My DMs are open. Just give me a shout if you're into any of this or you have anything that might be helpful. I'd love to hear from you.
And initiate at least a new approach to the many difficult problems that must be solved in both private and public conversation if the world is to shake off the inertia imposed by fear and is to make positive progress toward peace.